Hello and welcome to a beautiful day on the river. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Rio's how-to videos. Today we're going to look at how to fish a dry fly downstream in a river. Now you might ask, why would you fish a dry fly downstream? Well, the reason is very, very simple. If you are above the fish is lying here, the first thing the fish will see, if you do it right, is your fly, then your leader, and then your fly line. So fishing a dry fly from above a fish down to a fish is a very good technique if you can find an obliging fish. What I like to set up myself when I'm dry fly fishing here is I've got on the Rio Perception. I like this line for dry flies. Nice turnover, easy casting line. Throws all sizes of dry flies from 12s to 22s, even to 8s and terrestrials. And then on the downstream dry fly, you get a lot more aggressive grabs. So I like to fish a stronger leader than normal. That's why I fish a PowerFlex Plus. This is a PowerFlex Plus leader, which is a bit stronger than our regular leaders. So I always fish that with my downstream dry flies. This is a 9-foot one I've got on there, but I always lengthen it because I want lots of slack, and you'll see why in a minute. So I add on another 3 to 4 feet of PowerFlex Plus tippet, and that's my rig. The most important thing, number one rule in dry fly fishing, whether it's upstream or downstream, is do not get drag. Drag is when your dry fly drifts at a different speed to the current. One clue is you watch the bubbles or flotsam and jetsam floating down, and you try and see your fly parallel and drifting at the same speed. When you fish a dry fly downstream, you can have a problem, because when you cast a line downstream, you land with a straight, tight line, the fly lands, and immediately the fly starts to wake and skate on the surface. There is no way a fish is going to take that. That is so unnatural. So a downstream dry has problems. A tight line creates drag. Bad word is drag. To get a fly to drift naturally when you fish downstream, you have to give it slack. There's a number of ways of giving it, but let's see what happens when I give it slack. Cast, slack, that dry fly just drifts at the same pace of the current naturally down. And it'll do that until I run out of slack. As I said, there's a number of ways of giving slack. You can drop your rod high and then drop it like this, which is a parachute cast. When I drop my rod, I'm giving it slack that way, making my fly drift for 10 or 12 feet. You can also cast and do a couple of little shaky wiggles like that and put slack in by wiggling it. You can do a cast where you drop the fly from high, like a parachute cast, and drop it down. So really the key to success with a downstream dry fly is twofold. One, give it slack when it lands. And secondly, you're going to run out of slack. So when your fish is rising here, don't cast 10 feet above that fish, because by the time your fly gets anywhere near the fish, you've run out of slack and it's dragging. You need to cast within a foot or maybe 18 inches of that fish and give it enough slack to pass the fish. Then you have the best chance of catching a fish with a downstream dry fly. Patience is the name of the game dry fly fishing. Even though I saw fish rising 5 minutes ago when I was setting up, I'm not going to make a cast. I want to know exactly where that fish is. So I'm going to wait for it to rise, and when its head comes up again, I'm going to take a very cautious approach. I'm going to make my cast at least 2 feet short of the fish, and then it's going to drift down. The fish probably won't take it, but that's way safer than trying to get your first cast at the fish and being 3 inches too long and dragging and having a leader go over it. So start short, lengthen your line by a foot, get a foot closer, lengthen it by a few inches, get a little bit closer, and then nail it. And get 3 or 4 good effective drifts over it before you give up and try a different fly. Oh yeah, there's one over there. So let's take a look. He's rising close to the bushes. So my first cast is always going to be short. A little bit of slack. I've dropped my rod. The fly's drifting naturally. Now it's dragging. But I could see in that area where the fish was rising, my fly was the exact same pace as the bubbles. But I was a foot short, deliberately. Now I'm going to do it again with a little bit more line. Little slack there, it's drifting naturally. Now it's starting to wake or skate or drag, whatever term you like. Bad, but who cares? I haven't scared my fish. Now another few more inches of line, getting closer and closer to that fish. And the other reason I don't want to be long on this one is it's right by a tree. And if you get too long, you snag the tree, you shake the tree to get the fly off, you'll scare that fish for sure. This is a good cutthroat, a really nice size. So I'm just being really cautious, working my way closer and closer until I can cover that fish. That was a fairly good cast. That should have got some interest. Let's try it again. High rod drop, a little bit of slack. He's feeding right in that bubble line. Look how happy he is. Yeah, there he is. Beautiful. Land the fly on the bubble line. Look at that. That was so epically satisfying. This is a nice cutthroat. You can tell by the position where he was, tight to the bank, in the food lane, in the oxygen lane. But let's see if we can get him out here whilst I'm out here. So keep the rod low. We're playing a fish, pulling it up river. Lots of sponge in the rod. And you're trying to pull the fish upstream of you. Once you get the fish above you, then it's a really easy matter of just turning the rod and letting it drift into the net. Beautiful. Oh yeah. What a gorgeous cutthroat. Look at that. Look at that for a cutthroat. What a specimen on the downstream dry fly. All right, let's get this baby back. Keep your head in the water. Upstream, never let them back and forth and just let it swim out your hand. That was epic. Oh my gosh. I love the downstream dry fly. And you can see why. It's a technical way to fish. You've got to be really accurate with your cast. You've got to understand the currents. You've got to understand how to give slack, but not too much slack so you don't set the hook and miss it. That is why you do the downstream dry fly. So hopefully you enjoyed this episode as much as I did. It was a great episode of Rio's how to fish a dry fly downstream. If you enjoyed it, stay tuned. We've got plenty more episodes on the Rio website, on Rio's how-to videos. Thank you ever so much for watching.